Hello, welcome to another episode of Brit in Poland. This one I bring to you from Northumbria, actually more specifically a place called Whitley Bay. It's November now, so the weather is not ideal. It's a bit chilly. It's certainly been raining a bit and we've had snow and frosts. And as you can see, it's a bit windy on the coast, as you'd expect. So please forgive my overly long hair at the moment. This video is going to be a bit of a break from my usual Polish content. I hope you'll forgive me that. In fact, I'm going to be doing two videos about life back home. And effectively, the reason I'm here at the moment is because, well, sadly, I lost my dad. This video is going to talk about him and his life and, you know, the effect he had on me as a person. And will hopefully serve as a bit of remembrance, a bit of, memorial, as it were. So I'm not going to be talking about Poland as only in so much as when you're an expat and when you live abroad, one of the things you worry about most, providing you still have close connections back where you're from, is your family. You know, most of the time when I have friends who are, foreign to Poland and they would go back home for extended periods of time, it's to spend time with family or it's because something has happened to a loved one. And definitely it's the kind of thing that you always have on the back of your mind. You never want anything to happen, but you know one day something will. You know, whether it be an accident, whether there be some illness, you never know. Life is unpredictable and you try not to think about it too much, but it is one of those things that kind of weighs on you and you kind of think to yourself, you know, should I be spending more time like visiting home? Should I spend more time contacting family? Because you never know what you have until it's gone. And being completely honest, I didn't really know what to say for this video. I've been thinking about it for, well, I guess almost 2 months ago, because that's how long it's been. But every time I tried to think what I was going to say, nothing really came to mind, no coherent structure. So this video is going to be just kind of like a bit of an honest ramble. But I think maybe that's the best way to talk about these sorts of things. So I think maybe I'll just talk about the situation first and then talk a bit about my dad. So after COVID and the insanity of that, my parents, my mum very emotionally decided that she didn't want to be separated from her family anymore. So they packed up from my family home in Oxford and moved up here to the north so that they could be closer to my brother, his wife, and, their kids. Because, grandparents, they always want to see the grandkids, right? And yeah, one thing, I think maybe it was a year or two into them living in Northumbria, we noticed that my dad's health was starting to deteriorate. Nothing like life-threatening, nothing that was like what you'd say is like incredibly serious, but he, I don't want to go into too much detail, but there was some definite issues that he was having, and he was spending a lot of time with doctors, a lot of time getting diagnosed, a lot of time with experimental treatments and things like that. I mean, like half the time I think that people in the NHS don't actually know what they're doing. It's maybe a bit unfair, but that's how it feels. So yeah, he even had an operation to fix something that had gone wrong. As I say, nothing life-threatening, nothing we were overly worried about. It was more inconvenient. So that's the kind of backdrop where he was spending a lot of time with doctors, a lot of time sort of in and out of surgeries and on various medications and things like that. But at this point, we didn't realize we had anything to worry. You go back about 5-6 months ago, roughly, sort of July time. Apparently, he started having problems with his vision. Like he couldn't look to the left and right. Peripheral vision was messed up because it would become like blurry or doubled when he tried, and so he couldn't drive after that. And this was a concern. So of course, this is where we turned to the doctors more frequently, and they spent months analysing this. Didn't have a clue what was going on. And then it turned out that he was absolutely riddled with cancer. And I didn't really know a lot about any of this. It all came as a surprise to all of us. After all these months of diagnoses, to learn this makes you wonder why they didn't catch it sooner, especially given he was in hospital. But yeah, so I'm going to complain about the NHS a bit. And yeah, I think it was like a bladder cancer, which is apparently, one of the worst that you can get for treatment. And he had all kinds of tendrils going through his body, and that's what was causing problems with his vision, because these were in his brain. And scary. I'd never even heard of that before. It was also incredibly aggressive. And we received the news, as I say, several months after they started trying to diagnose what was wrong. And within a week, he was gone. He collapsed one time. They took him to hospital. That's when they kind of sped up the diagnosis. Collapsed the second time, and he didn't come back. When the doctors had given us the diagnosis, doctors don't know anything 100%, but they said that he'd probably have a few months. So I made the plan to move back to the UK and spend what would probably be his last few months spending time with him and the family, trying to help out. And then literally 2 days before I was due to come back, you get the phone call, first from my mum, then from my brother. And yeah, I think when you hear about these things, you have various reactions. My initial reaction was to think, okay, maybe it's not as bad as they're saying. Maybe everything's going to be okay. Maybe they'll find some treatments, or maybe he'll have, 6 months or a year or something, But to lose him so suddenly, it was a shock to the whole family. There's something I don't know if I was going to say on this video or not, but I want to get it off my chest. Now, obviously, I can't prove this, so you don't have to take my word for it. But I do wonder if what happened to him was linked to the COVID vaccine. And a lot of you at this point will probably be saying, oh, you're insane, you're some crazy conspiracy theorist, but it's not unfounded what I'm saying. I don't say things like that lightly. I mean, the fact of the matter is his health did start declining after moving up here, after COVID. And lots of weird things were happening to his body. And I was even talking with AI, and I know AI they don't know everything. But when I explained the symptoms, they said that There are actually studies going on as to how COVID can, or the vaccine is actually causing some of these symptoms. So in a way, I think the government killed my dad. And I fucking hate the government as it is. So they've given me another reason to hate them. Incompetent NHS, potentially fatal vaccine. Fucking ridiculous. And he was waiting over a year for an operation. So yeah, sorry, I had to vent a bit because, well, obviously it's an emotional time. I mean, even though it's a couple of months on, my mum is still struggling a lot. We're still going through the motions at the moment. Because when somebody dies, you know, there's an awful lot to do. You know, you had to go through their stuff and you work out, you know, what's valuable, you know, what do you want to keep, what has sentimental value, what would you kind of consider for charity shops, what might you want to sell, you know, what do you want to keep as a memento, all of this sort of stuff. And he did leave us with a bit of a legacy of stuff from his parents, because when they passed, he took on a lot of the documents and stuff from their home that also add to all of this. He didn't quite get round to going through it. He got through some of it, but it was something he was kind of reticent to actually work on. And then you have all of the admin stuff. I think we still haven't got probate sorted. We've, you know, you had to take care of the bank accounts. You had to take care of all the bills that were in his name. You know, all of the stuff he was signed up to. And he was my dad. So he took care of like everything. Well, 90% of things. So that's still going on. Thank God my brother, you know, he's stepped up and I'm doing more of the stuff around the house. He's doing more of the admin. I've done a bit of the admin. But it's incredible how much there really is to do when somebody passes. When I go, I'm going to try and keep things as simple as possible for people. Like, you know, it's going to be tricky, obviously, if I'm still in Poland when that happens, and what happens to my stuff and how people transport it and that kind of thing. But anyway. But yeah, like obviously, my dad meant the world to me. He was, you would say, foremost, he was a provider. Like he worked hard, like all the time I knew him. And I'm just going to check the camera. Yeah, he worked hard. He was in computing. Like I think his specialty was mainframes, which was kind of like a dying technology now, but was rather specialist when he was doing it. He worked for a lot of different companies over the years. You know, some better than others. He was always working long hours. He was often doing like overtime. He was commuting. At one point, I think he was commuting like 2 hours a day for work. So we didn't see a lot of him when I was young because, you know, when you're a kid and the parents are out working, then yeah, he always tried to, you know, connect, tell me and my brother bedtime stories. And, you know, he actually, like, one major thing he did is he introduced me to computing at an early age. Like, he had this BBCB microcomputer, something that we're looking to sell now, so I'm going to be putting that on eBay. So I was playing with this thing probably, I don't know, from about the age of 4, 5, maybe a tiny bit older. But yeah, for those of you not familiar, it's one of the first home computers in a way. Everything ran off these little cassette tapes. And the games, of course, were like incredibly low tech compared to now. But I remember playing stuff like Repton, and yeah, there are a lot of kind of crazy puzzle games. And but yeah, it's like one of the legacies my dad gave me is like the love of games. And yeah, we would play a lot of board games together, like as a family. You know, Monopoly, of course, chess. He taught me chess. Um, we played this game called Kingmaker that was all about the War of the Roses. Diplomacy, which is like a more sophisticated version of Risk. Yeah, so I also learned this love of board games and things. So there are a lot of aspects to me that came from him because of his direct influence. And he was always like a calm person. Like, it was very rare to see him get stressed about things. And he always liked things to be quiet and to be peaceful, you know. Like normally around the house, you would find him in his like study, you know, organizing things on his computer or reading. He did a lot of that. And you also saw him spend a lot of time in the garden. Yeah, he spent a lot of time working in his compost heap, talking to the robins and feeding the blackbirds and things like that. Like, he was a very peaceful soul. And he always had this habit, I think, of kind of putting people ahead of himself. Like, he was never really one to be selfish. And when you're a kid, you don't appreciate these things so much. Something like in later life, you look back on and realize just how much he did for you. He was massively into history, and something that him and my mum bonded on a lot. And he was in the process of writing this book about King Arthur, but very much from like the Cornish perspective. And it's something that as a family and some of our wider network, we're going to try and continue to work on to kind of try and finish it. Of course, picking up somebody else's work and carrying that forward, it's not the easiest of things to do. But in a way, it's part of his legacy. And it was, yeah, I mean, when he learned that he was like gonna die, it was one of the things he said he wanted to try and focus on before he went. Obviously, time didn't really allow him, but he spent years working on this book. He was even learning Cornish. In fact, like, he was very good with languages. I think he knew Latin, maybe a bit of German, a bit of French. Like, I don't think he was like fluent to speak it, but one of his hobbies was kind of translating texts into English from these other languages. And I've always struggled with languages. You know, you've seen whenever I've been using Polish, and that's going to be a continual challenge, but one I intend to do. And he was a very intelligent man. Like, I don't know if this is true, but apparently he was invited to join Mensa at some point. I don't know a lot about that. It's just something I remember hearing. I mean, his dad was like an electrical engineer. So it's probably, he was pushed very hard growing up to do mathematics, and yeah, where he'd rather have done history. Yeah, he knew a lot. He knew about psychology. He spent a lot of time getting into archaeology at one stage. He was even on some archaeological digs around Oxfordshire, and he was spending time trying to study Stonehenge and understand how that, you know, the purpose behind it, how it was used, all this sort of thing. So when reviewing the video, I decided that I missed out a few key things about my dad that I would like to share with you. So, one thing is he was very passionate about castles. Probably between him and my mum, they saw more or less every castle in the UK. And what my dad used to do is a lot of drawings. So he would visit these castles and make these lovely watercolor pictures. God knows how many hours he spent. Yeah, his original plan was to do a book of, I don't know if just English, but maybe British castles. Sadly, he didn't get time for that. He was a massive fan of music, particularly ABBA and the Beatles, because, and I say the Beatles because I've got several albums here, which, on a bit of inspection, are actually fairly valuable. This one here is an original pressing of the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, which we're probably going to look to sell, but because I don't have a record player. But yeah, you've also got the original Beatles Red and Blue albums, you know. So I was surprised, yeah, because checking the Matrix numbers, they are pretty much. This is like almost as old as an original as you can get. And these ones, well, one side is original, the other side is like third edition, so good numbers. And also, my dad was a poet. He entered a number of poetry competitions in Oxford, and you've got like this Headington poetry competition. And if you can just indulge me for a moment, I thought I'd read out a poem that he wrote, which, you know, being an Oxfordian myself and being a fan of the uh, literature that comes from there. So it's called Time and Elegance. When Oxford was a Saxon town, and oxen churned its ford around, high on the hill, and then looked down, there stood a place of high renown. Here Ethelred the king would say, the well advised, as he would say, this elegance that once held sway, time has pulled down and swept away. What would have C.S. Lewis made of traffic bombing down the Slade, of cars queued back while blocking trade, of shops that close that never paid? Grocers, butchers, PC shops gone, no Shergolds now, no Edgington. The petrol pumps stand all alone, and time's called time on pubs well known. And what was Tolkien's hobbit's fear? Did Gandalf meet a grander seer? And Gollum, did he really hear? Yes, time was what swept mountains clear. Screams of mothers while bearing young, screams of babies as hymns are sung, screams of children when bell is rung, time comes to still the youthful tongue. And those that joined United's roar, deaf to Swindon, we want four. Come on, you yellows, up and soar, time till time blew time and waved no more. The flying shark, the dancing feet that once looked on to New High Street, in Headington's quiet retreat, time and elegance truly meet. If you're from Oxford or Headington, those words will probably make more sense. A lot of street names and local landmarks and local historical figures thrown into there. But I just, when I looked at the original video, I felt I hadn't quite given my dad justice on just what he has accomplished. And all of this he did for himself. Yes, the poetry competitions he entered. And he just liked to work on his projects. And I hope I can finish some of those projects for him. So do look out in future when I release his book on Amazon. I'm praying that with a bit of help from AI and a bit of research, we can polish up the last few bits. But now, back to the video. So, he was a bit of a Renaissance man in a way. He loved his history, his archaeology, so merging the arts and the sciences. And it's something I tried to do too, but I would say I've never put in as much effort as he did. I mean, maybe in later life I will become as focused as he was, but let's be honest, generations like mine, we definitely had it easier than the older generations in terms of, maybe not in terms of like affording life, but in terms of responsibilities and challenges. I think he had to walk 10 miles to school or something like that, when he was a kid. But yeah, he was a very special man, and I'm going to miss him a lot. And yeah, I know my mum is still struggling with many people, they kind of look back and they ask in these situations, could you have done more? And I'm a little mixed. I mean, obviously living away from home, I didn't spend a lot of time like physically with my family, but like generally we would have a phone call every Tuesday night just to check in, catch up, see how people are doing. And we would, they would come to Poland, you can see I've done several videos with them on their impressions on Poland, hoping to get Mum to Warsaw in 2026. And yeah, I would of course go back for every Christmas, except for that one Christmas I couldn't go back because of the COVID restrictions. Oh, there are so many people in this world that really need to be hung. Sorry. Okay, maybe I'm getting a bit angry again, so I think that's probably a good chance to end the video. But Dad, I miss you, and I'm really upset about how things happened, how quickly things happened. The one consolation is, because things did kind of happen quickly, is that you weren't in pain at the end. But you have a whole family that misses you dearly. And every time we get stuck on something now, we're like, where's Dad? Because normally he'd be the one that would fix it. So I love you, and wherever you are now, I hope that you're at peace and that you're not too worried about us, because we'll manage. But yeah, thanks all for watching. This has been a bit of a personal one from me, and probably I'll think of stuff that I meant to say but didn't, because with these sorts of subjects, well, yeah, I wrote a really good speech for the funeral, but yeah, I think I captured what I wanted to say. So yeah, there'll be one more video about my time here in Northumberland, and of course there'll be plenty more videos about Poland. So thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned. Do zobaczenia.